All right, this is Jeremy Burgess, the Detroit Market Expert, and welcome to the first installment of my free real estate training. And what we're going to go over today is how to calculate cash flow for either rental or land contract for a single family home. All right, it's pretty basic stuff, but there's some things you need to think about while you're doing it. So we're going to just make up a fictitious property. I'm going to call it, 123 Street. Obviously, you can put in whatever you want to do. But first, when you're calculating cash flow, you're starting with a purchase price. So we're going to go ahead and say, purchase price of this property, including rehab and everything else, is $37,000. All right, so that's going to be your total investment. Now, you're going to have some obvious expenses, and we're going to cover them in detail as we go. But one of the most important is property insurance. Property insurance is very important, and you want to get good coverage. So that's my puppy. She may bark from time to time. Hey, Spice, be quiet. Anyway, it's free, so you get the puppy barking. Feel free to pay me money if you don't want puppy barking in the background. That's extra. All right, so on my insurance plan, I get a pretty good deal. It's about $800 a year annually. However, it looks like, this is why you need good relationships with your insurance agent. It's been $750 to $850 for a long time, but it looks like in the next year or two, with all the losses in the insurance company, this might be going up. So I'm going to be a little bit more conservative, and I'm going to bump this up for the time being to $900. And the reason why I'm doing this is when you're looking at these things and you're looking in the future, you need to ask this question: are insurance rates going up or going down? And they've been stable, at least in Detroit, for a little while, but it looks like they're about ready to go up again. So I'm just going to, add a little bit extra onto that just in case. So I'm thinking in the future. Obviously, we have some property management too. This varies, but generally it's 7 to 10%. In my case, my guy charges me 10% of collected rent. Free puppy barking in the background. So, Spice, be quiet. Vacancy and maintenance. These are two contentious points, and I'm very conservative here. You can go ahead and Google vacancy rates for your area. You can talk to real estate agents, talk to other investors, and I get numbers all over the board for Detroit. I've heard as high as 29%, as low as 6%. A lot of this, though, is it's going to be Spice, be quiet. Experience driven, because when they're taking these numbers, it's usually for an entire metro region, maybe not necessarily the area you're working in. Try and contact a real estate agent who leases a lot, or property management company who leases a lot in that particular area to narrow it down, and then you're going to narrow it down further with experience. Now, I don't do rentals anymore. So my land contract vacancy, there is no vacancy, but then I'm concerned about, my default rate, which is remarkably low. But let's go ahead and go with rental. Typically when I was doing rentals, I broke it down to two categories. Spice, be quiet. I broke it down into two categories, and non-Section 8 and Section 8. My non-Section 8 stuff, 10% of collected rent. That's what I did. And that's why I started with on Section 8. However, boy, they're hard on houses. And a lot of them, every year, they go to a new house. So, it could be 20% or even higher. Because all it takes is a couple months missed in a year, 12, and your cash flow's down significantly. And then maintenance. I do land contracts, so I don't have to worry about maintenance. But on rentals, I have found if it's non-Section 8 and you did a good rehab, if you're one of those investors who's cutting corners everywhere, and it's not like I'm turning my places into the Taj Mahal, but they leave the old furnace, the old plumbing, everything old, roof's got to be redone in 3 years, but they don't want to spend the money now, you're going to want to make this number bigger. In my case, I'll go ahead and link up my philosophy video on rehab. If it ain't going to make 10 years, I rehab it. Now, that being said, I still keep 10% of everything Because stuff over a period of time, not the first year, second year, third year, even the fourth year, stuff will break. You need a hot water tank. You know, hot water tank lasts anywhere from 7 to 12 years. Furnace needs to be serviced. Things of that nature. New roof, even a 30-year roof in Michigan, typically only makes it 15 to 20 years. It doesn't make it 30 years because of our harsh winters. You're going to want money, and I prefer to set it aside and slowly collect it over time versus write a big check or be surprised. My personal opinion, but this number is going to vary depending on the rehab you're doing and whether you're going with a regular tenant or a Section 8 tenant or even a land contract buyer. So, Spice, be quiet please. Shooting video here. All right, so here's some numbers. So it's, and we're just going to say rent, check your area. It's easy to figure out what this range is going to be. You get on Craigslist, look. You can call property management company, look. Properties in your area that have for rent signs, call and check. Ask the number of bedrooms, how big it is. Maybe even go take a look at it. But let's say we already did this and the number is $800 per month. All right. So this is everything we have to calculate what your return on investment is going to be. Your return on investment is pretty simple. It's your income minus all your expenses divided by your total investment. And this obviously changes year after year because your investment gets paid back, yada, yada, yada. And we're going to go ahead and calculate this. So we already know what our total investment is going to be, which is $37,000. So we just have to figure out the rest of this. So our insurance is going to be $900 a year. Since we went with 800 times 12 months times 10% is 960 for property management, and then in this case we're going to do 960 for maintenance as well. So we're going to go ahead and add these numbers up together. Oh, let's not forget vacancy too. 960 vacancy. So maybe it's time to get a new one. My 9's sticking. So I'm coming up with, oh, you know what I forgot? Jeez. Property tax. Good Lord. Let's talk about that too real quick. Puppy's distracted me. Sorry. Michigan is a little complicated, but we're going to go ahead and say $2,200 a year here, right? But there's some things I want you to look at. Let's go over here. When you're looking, and you need to check it's for state specific, but we have what's called homestead here. So, and it's interesting. So when you get your tax sheet from the city you're doing it in the state of Michigan anyway, you're going to see two things: SEV and taxable value. Why is this important? Well, the SEV is short for state equalized value. And what you're looking for, because of the law, basically, if you're homesteaded, you pay less, about 33% less property taxes. So you're looking to see if it's homesteaded. If you're renting it out, it's not going to be homesteaded, so make sure you make that calculation in there too. Also, because of another law they passed, which says if you're once you're in the home, they can't raise the taxes more than 1.5% per year. So if somebody's lived in the home for 20, 30 years, they can't raise the property taxes very much. But when they sell it, it could be uncapped. Spice, be quiet. It could be uncapped. So that's something you want to check. And the easiest way to tell is if you have a state equalized value of, let's say, 30, and basically this is the state's make-believe number saying your house is worth 60, so half of that is what the state equalized value is going to be. But then you see your taxable value is at 15,000, you know you got a problem. You know your taxes, it's homesteaded, they've owned it for a long time. You really need to watch this. Just don't use the number off the MLS. Pull this directly from the city you're working in, and then every state's gonna have something similar and like this, especially if you have homestead in your state. Check it, see if it gets uncapped, see what that's gonna look like. In this case, we know, wow, taxes are gonna double. And if they're not, if it's homesteaded too, and I'm going to go a rental, well, then that's going to go up as well. So let's say right now they're 1,200. Well, I know they're going to at least double, and the homestead's going to uncap. So just for, I'm not going to bust out a bunch of math on you in millage rates, but that's how we're going to get this number down here of 2,200. We're not going to go with this number that says 1,200 because there's a taxable value and SEV value is different, and it's also homestead. It's going to be unhomestead if we're going on a regular rental. So we're going to go ahead and add in our taxes. I get 59.80. Let me check my math again because my 9's sticking. So. All right, that's what we got. So we now have this over here, your total expenses, 5,980. And yeah, I realize a lot of these are not expenses today, but they're going to be expenses into the future. I hate that crap when I see these people, you just rehabbed it, so there's gonna be no maintenance, or they're using some sort of gross return on investment, and that's a bunch of cockamamie bullshit is what that is. Here in Jeremy land, we live in the real world. In the real world, things don't last forever, and I prefer to prepare for it instead of be caught by surprise, right? So our total income is going to be the 800 times 12. It's 9,600. All right, so now we're just going to subtract our total expenses, which we get 3,620. Divide that by your total investment. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Divided by 37,000, and I get 9.78%. It's like, oh, Jeremy, that's too conservative, whatever. You know what? It's okay if it's higher. I am kind of looking at, maybe not completely worst case scenario, but I'm trying to look as far into the future as I possibly can. Because I don't necessarily need to know what it's going to do tomorrow. I want to know what this property is going to do year 3, year 4, year 5. So your first several years, if you rehab it right and you're doing everything right, your vacancy probably not going to be that high. As you get better, your rehab better, maybe your rent goes up a little bit, your taxes go down because you fight it. I'm not calculating all that in the beginning. I'm looking, okay, what is within reason the worst thing that could happen to me? And am I still satisfied with this number? Worst thing that happened to me. In my opinion, 9.78, when I'm doing this cash flow and this calculation out, I would take a pass on this house. My number is at least 10%. Ideally, I want to be, 12 to 13, unless I'm in love with the property. There's a lot of reasons to be in love with the property, not just that it's pretty, because I see more future potential for it than maybe something else, right? But this is how you calculate cash flow. You got to be careful with the property taxes. Got to be careful. If you have a homestead lot, check to see if it's homesteaded. Check your state equalized value. Check your taxable value. Know what your millage rate's going to be when it pops. So you're not using a fake number that's going to give you a fake ROI. You want to be using real numbers. Call. Check on vacancy rates. Don't use the vacancy rate for the area, because those numbers are usually calculated for a metro. Like the Metro Detroit vacancy rate, I think last time I checked, was like 9%. And I know it could be a lot higher in some areas and a lot lower in other areas. I got some friends that do some stuff in the suburbs, have incredibly low vacancy rates. I got some guys who do some crazy stuff in Detroit, in the hood, with incredibly high vacancy numbers. So it is going to vary by area. Your maintenance, this is going to vary a lot based on how you rehab the property. So take that into consideration. If you don't have a lot of capital and you're like, you know, I'm going to do this on a shoestring budget, which I don't recommend, but I'm going to take this money and plow it back into the house, then you know your maintenance number is going to be a lot higher. If you did a decent job and you replaced what needed to be replaced, it wasn't going to last 10 years, and you didn't cut too many corners. You're not putting in granite countertops here, folks. You're just making shit work, and you're mostly putting it into systems, windows, roof, electrical, plumbing, all that. Then that number is going to be relatively low. Maybe your property management's less, maybe it's more. Maybe they charge first month rent for tenant placement. You can certainly calculate that in. Some areas do, some areas don't. Some property managers do, some property managers don't. What I don't want you to do is open up a book and somebody says, this is how I do it. I want you to think. Now this works pretty well for Michigan. Obviously I've done the bulk of my investing in the state of Michigan, mostly in the state of Detroit. So you can look at this and go, wow, okay, I can run with this. But check your tax laws, know this stuff. For your particular area and state, go to a RIA meeting, you know, take a realtor out to lunch, take a property manager out to lunch, pick their brain. That way when you're deciding, okay, I want to buy a cash flow property, what's a good deal, what return on investment am I looking for, and then you can calculate your cash flow. You know, this changes a little bit based on land contract. You can keep it homesteaded. You know, your maintenance goes away because they're in charge of it. Your vacancy pretty much goes away if you did your job right. This might be like 2 to 3%. You know, and things do change depending on what you do, but this is a good basic to start with, and then put more thought into some of these numbers than others. Also, when you're calculating your purchase price and rehab, go ahead and add 10% onto your rehab because it's typically always going to cost you more. Anyway, appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them below in the comments. If you're on my blog, go ahead and leave the post and the blog comments. I'm going to do a bunch of these, so if you have any requests, go ahead and shoot me a PM or leave it in the comments. I do read them all, sometimes not the same day. But I'm going to do a lot of these. I'm going to try and do 3 to 5 of these videos a week, with some philosophy videos as well, and hopefully trying to free some more minds and create some wealth for people and get them out of this rigged system. Anyway, my name is Jeremy Burgess, Detroit Market Expert, and thanks for tuning in. Puppy and all, take care.